Okay, so let's go, guys. So as part of today, we are going to focus about this Spring and Spring Boot. Okay, because slowly we are shaping up towards developing application. Yesterday about API development, we discussed some of the annotations and how to do. But today we will try to officially launch Spring and Spring Boot framework. Okay, go. First of all, don't create problems for yourself. What does that mean? Key, these things are simple. It's not that complex. These are not very great, grand things. Okay, these are just some frameworks. So keep it like that. Don't try to overhype. Okay, you need a lot of time to understand this framework. No, not required. Maybe today and tomorrow session you do that, and you will have grip over the main things about the framework, which is enough for starting to code on the application. Okay? And yes, it is a very big framework. You can keep learning for next 1 year also, and there will be so many topics. But the thing is, the basic understanding required to work on the projects, you will get that today and tomorrow itself. So have that understanding. Plus more, yes, wherever you have taken up any technology training about these frameworks, so yes, continue that, because there is a lot more things to dig deep into. So yes, definitely have that training knowledge. It will be required. But for getting started with coding, whatever we discuss today, tomorrow, it will be enough. And even for attending the interviews, that will be enough. You don't need to know even more than what we are going to discuss today and tomorrow. Okay? And based upon this, we will do practical discussions in the next week. And I think the base will be nicely set up for you guys. Okay. So even though you have not worked or heard about Spring and Spring Boot, no problem. You can put it into your resume. You can work in this project and even explain during interviews also. No problem. Okay. So chalo, let's get started with what exactly these are. So firstly, we are building different types of application. There are some basic concepts which everybody should be clear of. Types of application. I think most of you will be knowing this as well. Standalone application, web application, distributed application, right? Standalone, web application, distributed application. And then there is something called as a concept of web services. These are some basic terms. Everybody should definitely be clear with these things. Standalone simply means it runs on one machine. Single machine. Single machine, independent, not needing internet. No need of internet. Still it can operate. These kind of applications are standalone applications. Can operate independently, can stand independently. Okay, next, web applications. For their execution, they need web environment. They run across internet. Okay, they run across internet, generally on servers, and for accessing them, you need internet, you need web, you need internet. These are web applications. Okay, from deployment perspective, they can be deployed in single machine or over different machines also. That is a web application. So standalone does not need internet. Web application needs internet. It can be deployed on a single machine, or it can be deployed on different scattered multiple machines also. But needing web for interaction, that is where web application comes in picture. Okay. And then next one is distributed application. Distributed means definitely more than one machine is needed for running this application. Distributed means a project will have multiple parts, and different parts are running on different machines, and somehow these parts are talking to each other, interacting with each other. Such kind of applications are distributed applications. So what exactly that is? Definitely more than one machine needed for execution. The entire project is broken down into smaller parts. Okay, these parts are executing in different machines and interact with each other. That is what is distributed application. So just understand simple terms, remove any confusion, stick with these basic clear-cut assumptions. Standalone does not need internet, runs on one machine. Web application needs internet, can run on single machine or can operate on different machines also. Distributed application, mandatory, requiring more number of machines. Entire project will have lot of parts. These parts are executing in different machines. Okay, and somehow these parts interact with each other. Now comes the question, how do these parts interact? Web services are one of the way for interacting it. Okay, so whenever there is a world around where different pieces want to talk to each other, web services is one of the most common way by which parts of system communicate with each other. So there are several other ways also, but web services or web APIs is one of the common way. For many projects people will use this, but there are other ways also. Okay, so yeah, so what is this common way? So concept is web services or web APIs. The standards for developing this web services, web APIs is nothing but REST standards, SOAP standards, or gRPC related standard, JSON RPC related standard. So these are some ways of building web services. Other than regular web communication, there could be some other modes of communication also, like async, which is event-driven communication, or passing the data using a file system, okay, file system-based communication. So there could be different other models of interactions also, but commonly you will see these concepts are being very heavily utilized in multiple projects. So, but just understand, parts of the system communicate to each other using web services. Web services is a standard model. There could be other ways of communicating of services, but yeah, this is a common practice. So we need to definitely know this. And depending upon the project needs, sometimes you might use some other modes of communication also. Okay, so these are some basic terms we need to be clear before we really go to the next part. Okay, now comes the point. These kind of applications are fine, but now comes the question, how to develop these applications? How to develop these applications? Already, I think in week 1, in a very short term, we spoke, you can develop the application using the core programming. It's possible. Using your simple plain core knowledge, core Java knowledge, you can build these applications. Okay. Or rather than using simple, let me open a paintbrush. So there are multiple ways of building this application, guys. One approach could be simple core program, simple using your core Java. That is one way. Core Java. Another approach could be on top of this core, because writing things in directly core is lot of time consuming activity. So rather than directly working with core Java to build such a heavy, big projects, other approaches, the world around has given us lot of technologies, okay, like servlets, JSPs, okay, JDBC, all these are technologies for doing multiple things. Servlets, JDB, okay, JSPs, JDBC, RMI, and so on and so forth, JMS. So many technologies are there, which is built on top of this core programming. And using that also, you can build these kind of applications. And using this will be faster and far better compared to directly writing using core programming. So this is what it is. You can do it like this, but it is hard, time consuming, lot of mistakes can happen and unnecessary. So industry never uses this. Second thing is, never uses means you don't build entire applications simply using core Java. You need more power. This is what I'm saying. Core Java is internally used, but using this itself, building full application, nobody tries that. They need something advanced. What could be that advanced? It could be some technologies. Serverless, JSPs, JDBC, RMI, JMS, multiple more. So this is already provided by some guys in real world, available in jar form. You need to take this jar, put it into your class path, and you will be able to enjoy building these kind of applications in a faster pace. Okay, so which is good. So that is where you will use this for building such applications. However, what happened is there are problems with this. There is area of improvement with this. And that is where the next level comes in the market, which is nothing but the layer of framework. So in the market, a lot of frameworks are there, which is built on top of these technologies, which is for faster application development. And this is one of the strongest way for building any kind of application. And whenever you go for any project, okay, almost 90% of the cases, people will be working directly with frameworks to build applications. It can be done like this, but since past 10 plus years now, majority is blindly going with frameworks. Earlier, there were a lot of servlet JSP projects, maybe 10 years ago. Recent past May, it is just disappeared, right? Everybody is highly going for framework-based application development because that is faster. A lot of features are ready-made. So we just want to use it and focus on actual application development. Okay? And maybe you might get into a project job where old legacy technologies are directly being utilized, servlets and JSP, and a migration project might be there to convert this into a Spring Boot based application. Such kind of projects are also happening in the industry. Migration projects, okay, rewriting things in a new technology. But just be aware, we want to build multiple types of applications. It can be done with this or this or this. Over a period of time, industry has evolved so much. Currently, the industry is very confident. We want to use frameworks for project development. That's ultimate conclusion. We want to use frameworks. And Java is one of the leading player in while frameworks come in. Okay? All these other technologies, front-end guys are also having frameworks, even Node.js, Python, everybody will have frameworks. Without frameworks, people will not be developing applications. Okay? So the ultimate conclusion is, okay, industry, people even use this term, de facto standard. Nothing but it's a standard. De facto means it's not really written somewhere, but people just follow it. De facto standard. So industry de facto standard for building any application is by using framework. Okay, what is a framework? Framework is ready-made code which you will add to your project. Some ready-made code, okay? It helps you to focus on your application development, and all common logic for application building will be available in framework itself. This is another thing. Whatever yesterday, right, REST controller, you can imagine just we wrote @REST controller and our Spring was able to give the request to your method. If you don't do all those things, we have to write it in a different kind of model then, right? So simple, it's ready-made code. Like we just need to use those code @REST controller and all, and our code gets very special behavior. So this is what frameworks, ready-made code will be available. You can focus much on your application development. What is application development? Nothing but client functional requirements. Client functional requirements. And all the common logic is going to be taken care by framework. And imagine if common logic is already taken care, so it is properly developed, tested, and available. If you develop the common logic by yourself to make your class a REST controller, it will have errors, bugs, too much time will go in testing it, making it stable. And the point comes, when thousands of projects are running, why should everybody do that activity of building from scratch? So we want ready-made, proven things. That is where industry de facto standard, nothing but without saying, they will blindly use framework itself. So in interview, if they ask, okay, tell me something about framework, these should be your clear-cut bullet points. It is a ready-made code available, okay, for building any kind of applications. Faster development can happen. You will focus on your client needs and functional requirement. You just need to take this framework code and automatically, very quickly, your project development will happen. Just these 3-4 points are enough. Okay. Now, guys, are we clear with this? Basics of framework, is this clear? Ready-made code is there in the form of jar file. You need to take it, keep it with you, and automatically you focus on your project functionality. Add number, delete number, that drama. Okay, framework will run by itself. Making a web API, it just happened. We did not do anything, use get mapping, post mapping. But how it is taken, we don't even know that. That is wonderful, right? So that's what is the beauty of working with frameworks. You focus on writing your business logic. Take two number, work with the numbers. But framework takes care of the rest of the work for you. Okay, very good. Okay, now comes the next point, guys. Framework is clear. Okay, frameworks are required for building real-time projects. If you do anything less than framework, too much time-consuming work will be there. Okay. Now the thing is, what are the types of framework? Major types of framework. And if you want to really group these types of the framework based on applications they develop, we can majorly categorize the framework into 4 things, 4 types of framework. First one is web frameworks. The second one is web services framework. The third one is ORM or database style frameworks. Okay, and the fourth one is enterprise frameworks. So frameworks can be now categorized as different areas depending upon the type of application that they develop. Okay, so let's understand these few things. Web frameworks generally are used for building, yes, web applications. For a very long time in the industry, okay, one model of web application development was followed, which was called as MVC style development, model view controller. Model view controller. Okay, a different kind of a web application development style. Just take it from general knowledge sake. Okay, we are not going to get into very details about what is this, how it works and all, because our focus is to know what is required for us to work in our project, right? So out of curiosity, yes, you can take these terms, go to AI, go to YouTube and dig more for gaining knowledge. You will find a lot of reference of how to code, how to do this. Everything will be available. But just understand, web framework kind of projects, one of the model which was pretty much used in the industry was build web applications using MVC model, model view controller. And you will still find some of the projects happening in MVC style as well. Okay, majority have moved to a different style of communication, but still MVC based, plain MVC based applications might still be there. However, some of the people have started using the term for this as traditional web applications. You can imagine traditional matlab, okay, old traditions kind of. So that means it is not very latest related now. However, in some projects you will find it. Okay, MVC style of applications will be developed using this kind of project. What technology to use, we will discuss that. Okay, however, since recent past, maybe a few years ago onwards, another model of web application development is also picking up, which is reactive style of web application development. It's still very new. Since past 2 years, some of the projects in the industry have started switching depending upon need of the project, of course. Okay? So it's not like everybody is just going with a reactive style programming. Okay, still, if people want, they are choosing MVC in the current times also, if it is about simple creating a web application. Okay, however, since past few years, even one more style of web application development is coming in picture. That is reactive style of web application development. For high performance system where a lot of concurrency is required, threads needs to be managed a more optimized manner. So that is a new model of reactive programming, which is there since past few years. And going forward in the next 3 to 5 years, you will find more market adoption happening for even this kind of a development, web development style. Okay, so there are two things now. We are saying types of frameworks depending upon the kind of application they develop. And for developing web application, we have two models. One model for developing web application is a MVC style model, which is also a traditional web application development model, which is pretty old. Since many years, it's there. However, there is a change also happening. Reactive style of web application development is also something which has come up. Now comes the question, okay, we want to develop these two type of applications. Which framework options are the popular one in the current times? Okay. Now what is happening is, Spring is really such a dominated player. Spring is providing options to develop any kind of an application. So that means if you just use Spring, Spring has so many systems inside it, so many services and modules and projects. Using that, you can build all of these kind of applications. Spring is really amazing. It's very powerful. And that is one of the reasons Spring is called as even enterprise level framework, because it can be used for building all enterprise applications. Any use case you want, if you use Spring, you can build using that. So Spring has provided us ways of how to develop a MVC based application. Spring has provided us ways of how to develop reactive style web application. And guys, Spring is the ultimate framework because ready-made code is available. You can take the code, put it into your class path and get different behaviors in your application. That is where it is a framework. And Spring is the dominant player in the Java community for enterprise level application building. Spring has a lot of internal subparts, sub-projects, sub-modules. So Spring is the main framework. Okay, so Spring is main or primary framework which came in the market. And internally, it has a lot of sub-modules or sub-projects. These modules and projects are used for doing different kind of application development. So Spring is the big framework name. But inside that, lot of sub-projects are there, lot of modules are there, and different sub-modules or projects are used for building different types of applications. So we need to get this clarity. So Spring name is the big umbrella. Under that, so many options are there. You can use whichever option you want to develop whatever kind of application you want. So the primary framework here is Spring. Powerful, very strong. Okay. Now comes, what is Spring offering in order to develop MVC based application? And what is Spring offering for developing reactive style application? So basically, guys, there are two modules which Spring is offering. One of the module is called as Spring Web MVC, or people generally simply use it as Spring MVC. So it can be called by both names. Spring Web MVC is the module offered by the Spring team for developing MVC style web applications, or it can directly be referred to as Spring MVC as well. people might use that term, Spring MVC based applications. Okay. And for developing reactive style applications, Spring has given another module which is called as Spring Web Flask. Spring Web Flux. This is the module given for building reactive style programming. Okay. So now, depending upon the need of the project, if you want to build this, you would need to operate with this kind of programming. Next, if you want to work with this, you will operate with this kind of program. Okay. Parallelly, while we are understanding this, let's try to look at Spring documentation. Okay. So we already discussed everything about Spring is going to be as part of spring.io. Okay. So in the spring.io, you will see there are multiple projects. So earlier, when the Spring actually started, it started with the main primary framework, which was Spring Framework. After that, over a period of time, lot of other side projects came. So if we just click on this, view all projects, you will realize there are so many, what we said, entire Spring Framework is now organized in the form of modules and multiple projects. So these are all the different projects given by the Spring team. So many types of projects are there. So for different applications, you might need to use specific kind of project. Spring Boot is one of the project given by the Spring team itself. Okay. And this was the core framework which was given by the Spring when it started. Even right now also, this framework, the core framework, is still being utilized. Okay. So, and guys, now this is interesting. Every project has its own release cycle. Nothing but behind the screen. Spring is called as open source, right? You might have heard this. Spring is an open source project. Let's put it here. 4 type of applications, all that is fine. Where are we typing? Okay. Modules, this is okay. We will cut this piece. Okay, fine. Let's start typing here itself. So using Spring, okay, each project is having its own separate release cycle. If you know, Spring is considered to be open source, and each project has its own release cycle. What does this mean? Nothing but in the real world, anybody can make modifications to these frameworks. Anybody can do that. That is what is open source. The source code is available for everybody. You can see it, you can view it, you can make changes. Somebody will review it, approve it. It's an open source, basically, community project. Okay. And each of this is a separate project maintained in GitHub. So each project has its own release cycle. Okay. It's separate code maintained in GitHub. And anybody can make modifications to this. Anyone can make modifications to this framework code. But yes, again, review process and all will be there. You need to understand the requirement, the bugs, and then you can fix it, contribute to that. Okay, for example, if you just open, this is the old framework, Spring, which was developed a long time ago and now still being maintained. If you just click on this in a different tab, let's say, Spring Framework. So this is some more deeper dive into the Spring Framework. If you really click here, Learn, it will talk about what versions of core Spring Framework is going on. The current stable version of the core Spring Framework is 6.2.2. However, they have given a separate project, Spring Boot. Its current version running is 3.4.2. So Spring is operating at a version 6, Spring Boot operating at